Hey guys, it's Alex with Pod Union here. Today I'm going to give you 4 tips about writing a storytelling podcast. This is going to save you time and make your life a lot easier so that you don't have to rewrite things as much as I had to. The first thing I wish I knew before I did a storytelling podcast is I wish that I thought about the story structure. So go on Google, do a little researching about what a dramatic narrative is, and learn about the story arc. There should be intros, rising actions, climaxes, falling actions, and then your conclusion. And it should all bundle together like a nice story does. It's what keeps the tempo moving forward. It keeps the listeners or readers interested, and it kind of resolves some questions that are raised at the beginning and they're answered near the end. So these are the things that keep a story interesting and moving forward so that they don't just fall flat. If you do that research and kind of storyboard at the beginning, you're going to save yourself a lot of time and make your story more interesting and compelling to the listeners. Tip number 2, break your podcast up into chapters like a book. Each chapter can raise a new question and answer a question that was raised before. By doing this, you kind of keep the story interesting and you raise curiosity, and then you satisfy that curiosity with each new chapter. So there's always something that wants to be resolved in a coming chapter. By doing this, you kind of keep the story divided into interesting little side stories or stories that build on each other along the way. And it kind of keeps things a bit more dynamic than just a flat kind of story that's being told over a couple hours time or whatever it ends up being. Tip number 3. Write the story for your audience. Think about who your audience is. Do not write the story for yourself. I made this mistake and it was essentially like a diary. And so you end up kind of speaking about things that aren't actually interesting to the people that would be listening, your target audience. So keep that in mind when you're writing. So when I first wrote my first storytelling podcast, it was a nonfiction, so it's about real circumstances, and I kind of ran through things in my own head and mind that aren't actually interesting to people that are listening to the story. They want to know the events that unfold. They want to know the action that took place. Yes, they want to know a little bit about what's happening inside the main character, but it's more interesting to know the struggles and the actual factual difficulties they're having, as opposed to the internal, deliberations they're having or things like that. So think about your audience that you're writing for. Think about them, and your story will be much more interesting, and you won't have to rewrite it like I did. Tip number 4, get used to talking on the mic. It's awkward at first. It doesn't feel comfortable. You feel like an alien. You don't actually feel like yourself. You hear yourself play back on the recording, and you're like, who the heck is that? But just get comfortable with it, talking to the mic for, hours even. The more you do it, the better you're going to feel. Take a book, start reading the chapters of a book. And what I did that really helped was I took one paragraph and I read it in a silly way. And then I took that same paragraph and I read it in a very serious way. And then in a calm, laid back way. I tried to give different tones to the same text over and over. And it helps you kind of develop the type of feeling you're going for, especially if you're going to be telling your storytelling podcast. It's important to be able to read those tones and emotions into the text that you've written. So that's my 4th tip. If I had known all of those things before I started writing my storytelling podcast, I would have saved myself a lot of time. Right now, I'm in the middle of rewriting many, many, many pages that would have really been a lot easier if I had done my own work beforehand. And those are my 4 tips. Hopefully, if you take them into account, it's going to help you save a lot of time when you're doing your storytelling podcast. I know it would have saved me a lot of time, and it would have been beautiful to know all this in advance. So take those and hopefully apply them to your own work, especially the dramatic story arc. That's a very important planning tool when it comes to telling a story, keeping the tempo up and keeping it interesting. Thank you. All right.